And
yes.
welcome to MNN, Manhattan Network.
It's a real pleasure.
No, my pleasure to welcome you. I'm really happy because I know we've been to a couple of your seminars, your meetings, and it's really interesting, and there's a lot to talk about. So,
Well, humanity and the human being is very, very complex.
that's putting it mildly, I think. Welcome very much to Conversations, where it's a pleasure to welcome to the program Reverend Joseph Ben-David. And he's a minister?
I'm the senior minister.
Senior minister
and founder.
And founder of the Church of Humanism?
That's correct.
Of the Church of Humanism based in New York City here,
That's
if I
correct.
understand. And we're going to be talking about humanism and other matters concerning the human condition and so forth. And Reverend Ben-David, welcome very much to Conversation Manhattan Network.
I'm very pleased to be here and to talk about humanism.
Well, I don't know who's more pleased. I'm more pleased to have you, or you're more pleased to be here, but we're both pleased. And I wonder if you could, we're going to be talking about a number of different things, and I really have visited your website. I found it really very interesting. But could you share a little of your own background, please, where you're born and raised, and then we can get talking about what is humanism, where does it fit in, and that sort of thing. But could you share some of your background, please?
Well, I was born in Prague, in Czechoslovakia, in the year 1920.
20?
A long way and long time ago.
A lot of water under the bridge, huh?
But I was introduced into humanism in the year 1937 by a professor of philosophy at Charles University who introduced me into a book by Thomas Garrick Masaryk entitled The Humanistic Ideals.
Was he a Czech? Or?
He was the first president of the Czechoslovak Republic.
He was president, and he was a humanist?
And he was a philosopher, and he was a humanist.
A philosopher for a presidential head of state? That's an interesting concept.
That was a Platonic concept of government.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
And at that time, Czechoslovakia was the only democracy, real democracy in Europe.
Really?
Right. Because he emphasized the fact that you cannot have a democratic structure if you don't have people with a democratic, so to say, psychological disposition.
Interesting, yeah.
If you don't have humane people, you cannot have humanism. You can have, abstract philosophies and so on, but in reality, it's something else.
A question that arises is, how is it that some people come to have a humane or the ability to have a humanistic take on the world, as it were? Is that having to do with nature, nurture? There's some questions that arise out of that. What are the conditions that would make for people to be of that state of mind is an interesting...
Well, we are really talking about the evolution of the human personality and the evolution of society in general. And this is a historical process where many factors, so to say, determine what will happen, and then the free will of the person or the free will of a community will sort of influence the course of events.
A lot of big concepts wrapped up in those words.
Well, it's everything. You see, in the past, we believed that philosophy will save us. As a matter of fact, particularly we were thinking in terms of science and education will save us.
Technology?
Technology will save us. But today we see that technology or science or education can be actually misused and used against the interests of humanity.
They've made all kinds of false bargains, haven't they?
Well, but of course the positive aspect is also valid because education is important, right?
And technology could be an important liberating factor.
If we would be using what we know today in terms of science in the interests of humanity, it would be what Jesus was talking about, salvation of the world.
Probably the Buddha
and Muhammad, all of them.
And the
absolutely.
all the spiritual traditions.
Absolutely.
Yeah, right.
Because they were all striving for the same thing.
They do have a commonality, don't they?
Absolutely.
Are you associated in a way with I don't know if it's a Unitarian or Universalist Unitarian movement or something, or?
As a matter of fact, I am. I am an ordained minister of the Unitarian Church in Prague, the Czech Republic.
Is there a difference between a Unitarian church and a universal, or there's a? Are there branches of Unitarianism? Are there sects? Are there divisions? Or a Unitarian of a Unitarian frame of mind in the United States will get along with, to put it in quotes, with somebody from Czechoslovakia or China or something?
The American Unitarian Universalist Association is an organization of congregations, and each congregation is quite autonomous, so that some of them are, moving more into a particular direction, and others have their own specific qualities or properties.
I was married in a Unitarian church.
Where?
I know it was in Michigan, in Detroit. And I found it an accommodating kind of opening on science and thinking and so forth. Because for good or ill, I tend to, I guess, be sort of intellectually inclined and everything. And I found Unitarianism to be a comfortable place to be.
Well, the Unitarians were always for freedom of expression,
I think,
freedom of conscience, and
intellectual inquiry.
Of course, of course. Well, and also the principle of unity, see, which means a kind of an all-inclusive attitude towards humanity.
An all-inclusive, I like that. Would that, I wonder if that's like a comprehensive kind of understanding of things in a, to use another loaded, powerful word, in a systems way of understanding?
Well, I don't know whether
They understand the universe in systems terms as a comprehensive whole?
I would say organismically.
Organismically?
You see, like what is the unity of a body? It is the conglomeration of parts that are harmoniously integrated so that they form some kind of a
system.
Right.
It is.
So in that sense, it would be.
I use that. People who watch this program, I've been thunderstruck by Nicholas Wade, our science writer from the New York Times, revealing that there's something on the order of 100 trillion cells in a human organism. Epidermal, bone, brain, and they are all overlaid with the design, DNA, which makes them a system. Each cell is important, but they're part of a larger system, and it's staggeringly complex. And it's amazing to me that such a thing can exist, much less a frog. I mean, the biology is just a miracle. In a certain sense, the complexity that there is just there.
Buckminster Fuller
was
talking about, the macrocosm and the microcosm and this vastness of existence, and also the smallness. Who are we?
I know.
In vis-a-vis this, cosmos.
Why do some things exist instead of not exist? I mean, these are the big questions in a way, and you hit another very resonating chord with me, because Buckminster Fuller is my idea of the best mind of our time.
Well, he was a great humanist.
He would have been a humanist.
He is a humanist.
He is a humanist. I didn't realize. He can be tagged as a humanist. Well, you're in good company if you're with Bucky Fuller, I think. And an intellect that was just absolutely overwhelming, and a poet. And I have a great and high regard for him.
I heard him speak.
Yes.
Did you?
Yes, I made an interview with him some years ago. We made an interview. He was my philosophical hero, I think, along with some others. Are you familiar with Chardin, Teilhard Chardin?
Yes.
I like him too, the idea of consciousness rising and the omega point and some of those ideas.
Well, this is, the fusion.
You got into some trouble with the Catholic hierarchy, I think.
Well, of course.
Yeah.
The fusion of a reality-oriented spirituality with a dogmatic spirituality don't necessarily harmonize.
I wanted to ask you, I've read literature from your site, and it's very interesting, and you have some principles that you lay out, and one of them is addressing reality. I wonder if we could talk a little about that.
Sure.
What is reality? And you say that there is a reality as opposed to mystical, or I forget the terms you use, but actually I would ask you counsel, because you think of these matters and so forth. On the word ontology, you're familiar with the word ontology? And I look it up in the dictionary, it says it is the science of, or as I understand it, of understanding reality, or a science of reality.
Okay.
So you got an ontology. And I don't know if that applies, if it does. You're a man that has studied religiously, theologically, and so forth. It's an important word, epistemology, ontology. Ontology is a reality. Now, reality, how do we deal with, if it's theological, in terms of some absolute ultimate purpose or structure, the reality, which can't be understood within the special case ways in which we understand things. So there is a reality that is not, but reality in a more normal, mundane sense of the change. When you're talking about the systems change, things change. In evolution, we have punctuated equilibrium, and a new species appears, so the reality changes. But there is a broader reality, cosmic consciousness or cosmic reality, that would say, is ontology only relating to those large spiritually seen notions of an ultimate reality, or how do we deal with the evolution of new realities, and what do we call those, and also what do we call the new realities that contain within them a certain capability that has not been characteristic, let's say, of an evolutionary pattern up to that? Is they're capabilities, but they're not realized in the everyday world. I don't know if you, do you understand? Begin with reality. What do we mean by reality?
Well, let me preface this by saying, when I was very young,
yes, sir,
and I was still studying, you know, Schopenhauer and Kant and Hegel and Nietzsche and all these, you know,
some of the
Spinoza,
some of the lesser known ones, yeah.
So I was caught up in a network of words and concepts,
yes,
very often contradicting one another, and totally absorbing the minds of the people who were hung up on one.
Right.
Let's say if someone was a Spinozian, you know, nothing else existed than Spinoza.
It's probably not as bad. Yeah, it's probably not as bad as the Trotskyites. Did you ever get among the Trotskyites, and how many interpretations can dance on the end of a dialectic needle?
The struggle between Trotsky and Lenin and Stalin. I mean,
but the Trotskyites, they're Shockmanites and that, they're all off on different kinds of interpretations.
It's a religion. You know, for these people, it's a total conviction, absolutistic faith in a particular ideology. Or
the truth.
The truth, exactly.
Bucky was very upset with the idea of a truth. He said that it's an a priori mystery in the universe, and will be. You know. But I didn't mean to interrupt you, I'm sorry.
About reality.
Yes, sir. What is reality? Yeah. And how do we deal with it?
Reality is, first of all, like anything else, a word.
Yeah.
And as such, you can interpret it in many ways. I prefer, because my approach is existential rather than philosophical, I would approach it in a much more concrete way than dissecting it in terms of the various philosophical aspects.
Reduction.
And that then I would say that reality is that which is, which will be, and also which really was, what really was. In other words, it's the actuality of being, right? And in that sense, it's a paradox. It's very simple, and it's very complex, because You can take the reality of, let's say, a person like Hitler, right? Hitler represents a certain reality. And if we view all the implications, first of all, his private life, you know, the whole evolution of a person who eventually ends up with all kinds of prejudices and all kinds of even sadistic impulses and so on, gains power, the effect of that is enormous, right? So this is also reality. Now then take a reality of a person like Albert Schweitzer, right? Here we deal with people who somehow, for some reason, and we know some of the reasons why that happens, humanized their being and are able to perceive the outside reality more objectively than some of the people who are fanatics, you see.
Yeah.
So now, reality,
yeah.
you can see it as a purely, how should I say, philosophical issue, but you can also see it as the concrete manifestation of a particular condition. So let's say, speaking theologically,
Yes.
in the Western civilization, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam certainly play a decisive role. And if we consider, for example, the Jewish God,
Yahweh.
well,
No?
right.
Yeah, you got me.
Good,
I
good.
know.
I'm glad you said that,
Oh,
because Toynbee would say the same thing.
Yeah,
Toynbee would
yeah.
have said Yahweh.
Yeah.
No,
Oh.
there's no such thing as Yahweh.
Really?
No.
Oh, my Lord. I've been misinformed.
Well, that's, you know,
Here, and I thought I had...
conventional education.
Yeah.
The word in the Hebrew Bible is not Yahweh, but it's the tetragram consisting of the letters Yud, He, Vav, He. You see, I speak 4 languages, so I read the Bible in Czech, in German, in Hebrew, and in English, so I can compare it.
Yeah, okay.
And these 4 letters really
That's
mean...
in the Hebrew?
That's in Hebrew.
Yeah, all right.
Yud, He, Vav, He. And no Jew is allowed to pronounce these letters.
Well, you're not, you just did.
You don't...
You just did, but you're not a Jew.
Well, I'm a humanist, so I can...
So you can,
I'm
right?
free.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah.
And all you Jews in the audience, don't you dare...
Well, what does it mean, this Yud, He, Vav, He?
I don't know
That
what.
which was, that which is, and that which will be, in
Not
other words,
really.
existence or reality.
Really? Really?
Now,
that's interesting to me, yeah.
You see, once you see God as reality, then you have something to work with. Because when you add to it the ethical attributes of the good prophets of Israel, because there were some prophets of Israel which are very controversial, but the ones who were preaching justice and peace and love, including Jesus, you see, you add this to reality, and you have something really beautiful to go by. And Muhammad did the same thing. You see.
Yeah.
Now, if you take it dogmatically and use these scriptures in a literal way, then you fundamentalists, then you arrive at different conclusions. But if you can somehow relate to the personalities of these founders who were struggling, who were trying their best under the most horrendous conditions, and who also had to make all kinds of compromises.
These are the prophets?
You see?
So?
No,
Or the people?
Jesus also.
Right. Well, he's one of the prophets.
I mean, what do we know about the real Jesus? Everything was written 100 or 200 years after his death.
In Greek, mostly, I think.
And in Greek, right.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
If you retranslate it from Greek into Hebrew, it comes out quite
You don't read Greek?
differently.
You don't read Greek?
Unfortunately,
Oh,
not.
there's got to be a second source.
I had some Latin when I was going to
Latin.
my real gymnasium.
You remember the Latin? You do?
Well,
I had to do all
ego me, tu, iti, vite. I still remember a little bit. Some phrases from Ovid, which I would not repeat.
You don't want to, some of that was a little bawdy, I think,
Right,
you know.
right.
But anyway, that's it, and it's got a temporal context to it too, which I think is interesting because things are moving in time. I once did a program with Swami Satchidananda. Tried to sit. He was in the full lotus at the St. John the Divine Cathedral.
Yeah.
Beautiful, and the Gregorian chants. It was beautiful. So I tried to sit in the full lotus. I was younger then. I nearly turned into a pretzel. But we were talking, but I couldn't talking with him, but he would not, as they say, recognize the concept of time. You know, I couldn't get him to concept, this is the year such and such, time, because they have a different kind of take on things, the Vedic and so forth. But they have that, but the notion of time, that the reality changes. And the thing, and I'm going to pursue this, even though I'm sorry if it's off the course for somebody. It's particularly important to me personally. It's like as if we were having coffee.
No. I'm all with
you mentioned, and I have a dilemma in trying to understand things. It's very important to me, so I can share it on the air with that. Is this notion of because wrapped up, you have, and you mentioned Bucky Fuller, and Bucky Fuller was a comprehensivist in that. And among other things, he had a view of the universe, an a priori mysterious nature to the structure of universal mind in a series of hierarchical synergistic resonances and so forth. He also saw a purpose to biological evolution, and I think it would be fair to say in a certain sense it had to do with understanding that the second law of thermodynamics, which is all systems move towards chaos to the limits of the system. And he said at one point, he cast about for a countervailing function in the universe. And he said the biological evolutionary purpose from bacteria to simple forms and so forth, and then it comes up and it moves across entropy and brings increased patterns of conscious understanding to the process of which we're a part in consciousness raising through time. So there was consciousness of Australopithecine, or Homo habilis, or up the hominoid line that led to humanity. And then we appeared 200,000 years ago as a species. The mitochondrial DNA tells us we all come out of a common ancestor gene pool, maybe singular, in Africa. And we've been here 10,000 generations, and we reach a point where we have the ability to extend our consciousness into the environment in a uniquely powerful way in terms of the technology is an extension of consciousness. And we can extend our consciousness and make the environment other than in an Eden-like sense that most of the creatures encounter. They're embedded in the nature and the ecology there. But we can make it different. As somebody said, Gordon Childs said man makes himself or something.
Well, if we sort of concentrate on the here and now, on the reality of the here and now, okay, where the evolutionary process sort of culminates with the reality in which we actually live.
If I may, your concept in the translation of the ancient Hebrew word for God is was, is, and will be. It had a temporal quality to it. In terms of, because the evolution, the events are changing.
Not
the
really.
reality, that's the thing, that's my dilemma.
It has that what will be in it, so it's an evolutionary concept.
Right, but it changes.
Of course, the process in itself, there are different manifestations in different stages of the process, right?
Yeah.
But if we are thinking in terms of reality in the here and now, I am distinguishing between two, how should I say, stages or elements. Reality, which is what is nature, right? Nature in its general state. Now, nature in its general state is not necessarily a friendly place to be, because it's full of predators and parasites.
Everything's
the
eating
jungle,
everything
and
else.
everything is attacking and devouring and
that's what Woody Allen said. It looks
yeah.
like a big restaurant. Everybody eating everybody.
But
yeah.
not necessarily. You see, this was the whole thing. When Albert Schweitzer was paddling his boat through the jungle.
In the Congo, huh?
Yeah. He was looking and seeing all this horrendous, process of breeding and decay and so. And suddenly in his mind came up the words, reverence for life. Now this is already revolutionary. This is revolutionary because that is not a part of this reality. This transcends, the spirit transcends that reality. I say now the following. There is reality, which is the jungle. And we have to accept it because the predators have to live, and therefore they kill and devour the victims. However, because of our humanity, and that's where humanism enters into the picture, because of our humanity, because of the application of our spiritual dynamic, which includes science, which includes psychology, compassion, love, technology also, sure. We can transcend that jungle-like existence and create something that is moving. We can never achieve it totally, but it is moving towards an ideal reality, a reality which is not based on this mutual killing, but which is based on ethical, social principles of justice, love, peace, and what we could call truth.
That we help in the creation of.
Well, absolutely. Not only that,
we take a hand in it.
It depends on us whether we do that or not. See? So that humanism basically is the process. I see it as from two aspects. First of all, the ultimate concern for the human condition in the universal context. So it's not egocentric. It has to do also with the value of the human beings. That includes all nature. It includes all human beings, all animals, even plants. It includes really the caring for the universe. This is a religious concept.
Well, I understand. Yeah, you got Lovelock with the idea of Gaia. I don't know if he's still holding with that, but the earth as an organism, in a sense, it's a interrelating. And the Vedics have been telling us there are no academic or other discipline or divisions in nature. It's a seamless web. It's all one system.
Well,
I mean, the earth.
Yeah,
and then that's within the context of the universe.
I would say that...
And there's an evolutionary process on that earth of which we are a part, and those relationships to that broader pattern, which I suppose Australopithecine would have had some notion of that, but there came 200,000 years ago a self-reflective consciousness that was characteristic of our species. And we're now reaching, and we have a capability of extending our consciousness in technology, and we now have a technology which many of our scientists will tell us. We had this theory of relativity in 1905. You could have an inflection point leading to hydrogen, atomic and hydrogen splitting of the atom, which thought there was an absolute certainty and ontology at that time, but then it led to something new. And we got to the point where with the weaponry that we have now, apparently it is that if there was to be a release of that energy that is in the weaponry systems that exist, not as an inflection point from the idea of special relativity in 1905, you could project an idea, but in reality in terms of weapons that do exist, and so if they were unleashed, it would apparently, this would be something that should be studied and put upon the you know, the wall of every think tank and everybody who's thinking things, have we reached a point where Joshua Lederberg seems to tell us that that is the case, and others with weapons of destruction, that we could destroy our species now, the whole species, and there would be, if they were unleashed, there wouldn't be the tribe in the other village would be done in, but we'd be okay, or vice versa. We can destroy the whole species for the first time, which we couldn't do in the Second World War, that we've reached some sort of an existential relationship to the cosmos that is characteristic of this moment now. And Joshua Lederberg said we only crossed that line probably around 1970. So that's a new reality. That's what I was getting at. There's a capability existent within the reality, and we're talking about reality. That's a new capability that we should be taking account of in terms of our trying to figure out what we're about here in the universe.
Well, how could this...
We were protected historically from that.
Yeah,
we were impotent. Yeah. As late as the Second World War, we were impotent. We could try. The Nazis could try and kill everything, and we could try and kill them.
It is
but now there's a new kind of stage since about 1970. And that's a new reality that exists. Do you understand? That's what I meant about the reality.
Absolutely.
And if I may, just to end, the adverse side of that reality is that we may be able to provide for humanity within a systems pattern, ecologically and so forth, that has not been characteristic historically of the human condition, or within an ecology context, of maybe perhaps, as Bucky Fuller suggested, and he came up the same year, that the productiveness of the technologically extended consciousness that exists created, if we talk about haves and have-nots in the world on a system scale, that there was a higher percentage of world population could seem to be haves by some criteria than have-nots through time. So the trend is that there were more haves in terms of the capability that the technologically augmented capability provided with good design, as Fuller indicated and so forth, that we may be actually, he said we crossed the 50% mark in his sense of the capability of providing a have style of living for everybody within an ecological context in 1970 as well. That's the year he came up from. The 1952 it projected. We were in a certain sense, in a material sense, transcending in our capability the very concept of scarcity as an as a countervailing notion to the fact that we could destroy ourselves. And that's the dilemma. We have the capability, it exists, but it's not taken into account this existential transformation that has occurred in the reality now, and it wasn't available in the past. Something has changed, and how do we deal with that theologically?
Well,
and do we call it, and that reality, that transformed reality, let's just say we're transcending scarcity. Is that a possibility? Is that an impossibility? I think they will tell us we can provide for everyone now within an ecological context. We have a capability we haven't had historically. And how do we deal with that reality? And why isn't it on the wall of every think tank, if that is the case? And why isn't it front and center in the intellectual community trying to understand the human condition on this planet, if that is the case? But could you deal with me philosophically that idea of differentiating the... It's not ontology, it's not an absolute reality, it's a transformed capability that's characteristic of existentially the moment we live in, both good and bad. And why aren't we dealing with that with our political leaders or anyone else, if that is the case? That's my dilemma.
Well, what would be the key to unlock this dilemma? Well, I can see it as a kind of a trinity.
Okay.
Politics, religion, and sexuality. These are, in my opinion, the three strongest determinants of history.
Politics,
religion, and sexuality.
And do you include within politics economics?
Everything, sure.
All that secular stuff.
All that technology
stuff.
And so on.
And the other one was religion?
Religion
and things spiritual?
Religion has to do with
you put sexuality
and
so
sexuality
important.
Extremely important.
You think?
Because
yeah, okay.
Sexual repression and sexual oppression not only create inability to think rationally, but actually enhance sadistic and masochistic impulses.
Oh, yeah.
Now, we know that, but most people didn't know.
Yeah,
sure,
yeah.
you see.
Mm-hmm.
So the question of politics, right?
That's a good one to
Okay.
begin with my quest, sir.
Okay, okay.
I'm wondering about that the ontology has changed in its potential, and it's never brought up. We don't have we've inherited a system.
How do you define ontology again?
I don't know. That's my problem.
Oh, because
ontology is the
you
study
asked,
of reality.
the study of reality.
Yeah, so the reality has changed fundamentally in terms of having transcended scarcity as a reality. But all of our institutions...
You mean scarcity, by that you mean hunger in the world?
Yeah, no, not only, if I may, not only.
Yeah.
And this is important to me. I'm sorry if the people are bored by this, but it's something very important to me. Not only hunger and physical and everybody got a hot dog to eat, that kind of thing, that's there, yeah. But even at the level of knowledge and of knowing and that kind of thing, that we have come to some sort of a moment of gestation or of fulfilling or something, and we're about to leave the womb. We're about to change. We have changed qualitatively in the universe, and our systems have not caught up with that change and that lag. It's a capability. We still live in absolutely universal unjust situations that we've inherited from history. And how do we deal with that notion of having that the broad situation, the evolution of consciousness has changed qualitatively, and why don't we hear that from the intellectual community if that is the case?
Because of the absence of humanism.
Okay.
You see?
Mm-hmm.
If everything is based on self-interest of isolated groupings or classes or
clans,
even
tribes,
or even an
nations,
individual, a
or
dictator.
an individual. Yes, sir.
You can
yes,
have
sir.
a dictator,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Then you don't have the humanization going on. What you have going on is
What we've got is we look out on the political
right.
landscape.
You see, there are two kinds of politics.
Yes, sir.
One kind where politics is the brute struggle for power. Anything goes as long as you are a winner, right?
Social Darwinism.
Well, okay, that will be. And then you have politics as the art of either governing or, so to say, organizing society in a way which is productive and creative. Right, you see? Now, we don't have too much of that, particularly when it comes to democracy. You see, we in the United States believe that we are the paragons of the democratic ideal. In actuality, we didn't reach that stage yet. We are moving in that direction, although there may be some slipping backwards since the assassination of President Kennedy. But in actuality, Bertrand Russell said it.
Yeah.
Our democracy, to some degree, is a pretentious democracy. It is still the dictatorship of the majority, manipulated by a minority.
Absolutely. We do not live in a democratic world.
Therefore,
we live in a plutocratic world.
Well, yes. So, you know, this is our problem. And this is why we have terrorism. That allows and provokes the terrorism, and then we say we blame the other side, which is also. I mean, the terrorists are terrorists.
And put on our belt buckle, Gott mit uns.
Right.
And everyone thinks God's with them.
And that's why I'm telling you, if some of the good prophets of Israel, Jesus and Muhammad, came to a summit meeting on the Middle East, there would be peace.
Yeah, right, like that.
They would solve the Arab-Israeli problem. They would solve the problem of Iraq, Afghanistan, and everything.
If I pursue this, and it's worthy to think, because the humanism, these things that raises issues, it seems to me, is that those institutions and the philosophy and the ethics and the morality, I mean, when you think about 10,000 generations we've been here, this species, we arrive at a point where now at our own hand, behest of an individual, could destroy the whole enterprise called Homo sapien.
Absolutely.
Couldn't do that 25 years ago. Something's going on. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Oh,
And
I'm
so
with you on that.
those historically inherited institutions that we have, the nation state, notions of economics, the idea of scarcity is forever. There can never be enough for everything. For one to gain, the others must lose. How are you going to balance out in a just way when there's not enough? Which baby are you going to let die because there's not enough food to eat? Those kind of decisions and morality conundrums that have been necessary within the historical context has perhaps, in this notion of Bucky Fuller's, has the reality is one that is making it possible, not in the name of ethics or something, maybe even in the name of systems efficiency or something like that, make it possible for us to structure our institutions within a realism, understanding there is within our capacity enough. Is it impossible that we are going to transcend the reality of scarcity for everybody on this planet within an ecological context, which is a condition of which we have never had the luxury of, except maybe for the last 20, 30 years. Perhaps we've transcended that in that period. And is that a possibility? Is it impossible to think that we will have a situation where there is enough so that greed, anger, a lot of these negative things which seem necessary. If you were a big pig and you had a couple of little pigs, you had to fight your way to the trough to make sure your pigs survived, right? That kind of thing. But that there's a change that's taken place and it's never voiced.
Well, I think that the United States...
Do you understand my dilemma?
I do. I certainly do.
And if you say we've transcended scarcity, people say, well, look at all the injustice. There's all this historical lag with these institutions who had invested in these traditional institutions and so forth, but they are fighting, as Marshall McLuhan said, we drive fiercely into the future with our eye fixed firmly on the rear view mirror.
Yeah.
But can you address that in terms of what we mean by reality? And how do you make that division between the capacity that is there that we're not realizing and what is called reality? I don't know if you can understand what I'm saying. It's a problem because I don't know what the language is.
You see, there is a philosopher with the name Constantin Brunner. Mm-hmm. Nobody knows him. Okay. They know other Brunners, but Constantin Brunner with a C is a really unique kind of a personality. Mm-hmm. He was saying that there are three types of people in a society. Mm-hmm. You have a small group of people who are so evil, they are real devils. They are totally egocentric, unscrupulous, brutal, inhuman beings. It's a small group. Not too many are like that.
They're the ones running
but
the
they
world.
are there. Well, some of them, right? Then you have a large group of people who he calls the people of practical reason. Mm-hmm. These are people, conventional, average people, who think in terms of, in relativistic terms. Mm-hmm. Good is what is good for me, and I submit to those who would otherwise harm me, and they cooperate with dictators. Some of them cooperate with good people, but in general, they really don't count because as they are en masse, they don't make decisions on their own because they are manipulated. They could, they could, but they don't.
Erich Fromm had a line, the maliciousness of normalcy or something you had, or Erich Fromm, who wrote The Sane Society, he said, normalcy, I forget. It was a notable line in your literature. Go ahead, yeah.
Right. And then you have a small group of people whom Constantin Brunner calls the people of the spirit. These are the real people who don't think in relativistic terms because they realize what is happening. Their intentionality is pure and ethical, and when they are discovered, usually they are killed. But everything depends. Jesus, of course, Martin Luther King, all these people. But you see, everything depends on these people. And these people exist in our time too. Now the United States has an enormous responsibility because we have the best and we have the worst in enormous quantities, even the best.
That's right.
You see? And if we could somehow empower the people who would prevent this devolutionary process of reality and apply technology, apply philosophy, particularly psychology, because we need loving people. See, I'm a religious humanist. By religion, I don't mean, you know, going to church and praying and worshipping some idol or so. But by religion, I mean the devotion to the highest ideals or the intentionality to transcend reality so that it won't be this jungle reality, but this higher reality I'm talking about. We
and
have
that's
to.
Part of the that's part of reality.
It is, of course, it is.
It
It is, absolutely.
There's an a priori mysterious design to universal mind, and we may be coming into a new relationship to that here at the end of the human time, tenure.
You see, this will happen.
There will be a time.
If the West will meet with the East. I mean...
Kipling notwithstanding.
Well, that's... he lived at a different time.
Yes, sir.
You know, the world is smaller since then.
That's what I was getting at. These times it has changed monumentally. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Oh, absolutely. I understand your concept of scarcity.
Why does the... if not the political, you wouldn't expect the political and the powerful to be able to, as they say, grasp that idea. They're very vested in the historical institutions, which were all formulated within scarcity. Philosophy, but the intellectuals, why are the intellectuals not, if if I may, if that's true, that we've transcended scarcity. Now, the assumption is it's impossible. There can never be enough unless everybody's swimming in a swimming pool full of diamonds or some nonsense. But some realistic notion of that we have this capability that we're not realizing because we're so busy protecting the old paradigm.
No,
but why is it never voiced, I wonder?
I think I can get to it in this way. The opposite of scarcity is abundance.
Yes, exactly.
All right.
And that capability is before us.
Right. Now, we have this abundance in many areas, and
including understanding.
I go with you, on that, because it includes not just, money or so.
No, spiritual understanding, everything.
Science.
Yes, right.
We have so much. We have a wonderful world.
Yeah, there's enough.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have to be zero-sum.
How can it be applied? Why isn't it applied? Why is it only used in an exploitative, manipulative way against people?
That's what I'm asking you. I came to you for wisdom. You're a man of the cloth. You have an understanding.
That's why I'm saying a humanist religion, particularly a humanist religion that is based on a God concept, in my opinion, has the only power to reach the heart and the gut of people at large, because virtually billions of people are connected to this word God. But what it means is of great importance. If that word God means some illusion, some unreality, some belief in something that doesn't exist.
A lot of people of a scientific bent think that that's all just mythic nonsense, right?
Absolutely.
And some people think of humanism as that being rational science, and that science now has overcome all these legends.
Which is also wrong.
Yeah, okay.
Which is the conventional humanism as we have it today.
Yeah, is anti-religious or anti-spiritual.
It is, in the best case, it is agnostic. But in actuality, it is atheist and materialist.
They take a pride in that. They take a pride in the rational mind, and we can control everything, and that those are all legends that we had to live with throughout this dark history.
You see, I have a kind of a I take a kind attitude even to evil.
Yeah, I understand.
Because the evil is not evil by itself.
That's
the evil has its roots.
That's right.
And is not just, responsible.
In the condition itself,
Eventually you are responsible for what you're doing.
Yeah,
but,
right.
To get there is a tragedy very often.
Yeah.
So
that's very good, yeah.
So the same happens to humanism, see? Now, the Church of Humanism is really the only humanist organization that has a God concept.
Okay, that's interesting.
And
so
you
like
see,
Michael Behe, do you know Michael Behe and
no,
Darwin's Black Box? He answers that with, they got a thing, instead of creationism posited against evolution as that kind of, they've got an idea of intelligent design, which is getting some real traction, the idea there is a design in the universe.
I don't go along with some of these philosophical assumptions because for us in the Church of Humanism, let's say for me and my associates, because we are free thinkers, so you can think whatever you want.
Right.
We are not dogmatic. But most of the people, like myself, we believe that God, that word God is just the word, but that word implies the creative process in nature. And as I said before, there is also this parasitic and aggressive, jungle-like process that is going on. Now, the creative process in nature includes everything. What you talk about abundance, the same thing, basically. You see?
Yeah. The capacity for it.
Not just the
is
capacity.
Going unrealized.
Also, but it is going on, but it's not applied, you see?
Well, it's never voiced. And you wouldn't expect it from the leaders. There will be a lagging indicator, the business in that. But from the intellectuals, it should be, if that's the case, if this thing is there, it should be on every think tank wall. Can that be real? That we've transcended abundance? We've transcended scarcity? Or is it, as is the normal, everyday accepted notion, there never can be enough. We must all be using these same institutions that we've used to deal with that kind of a condition throughout this whole thing. James Joyce called history as a nightmare from which we're attempting to awaken. We may have the alarm clock right there. We're about to awaken to a new condition of synergistic involvement of everybody in this thing in a way where they can realize their own inner given potentiality, and we just don't even bring it up that the condition has changed. That's why I was saying reality. That's a reality that is never voiced. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
And you still got all the examples of injustice and everybody fighting. They're juggling atomic bombs. They're doing the same old stuff that they've been doing for 200,000 years. But the situation has changed, and it's not voiced. I'm sorry.
Well,
it's a dilemma of mine that is really at my core.
I'm one of the few people who are still alive and knew in person Martin Buber.
Oh God, I know. Dialogue.
Now, Martin Buber came up with
He was
this,
a friend?
Well, I can't say a friend,
but you knew.
I knew him. I met him several times.
What an honor.
And I was also elected in his home to promote his organization in the United States. So I'm quite familiar with all his
what an honor,
books and so on.
Yeah.
See? Now he's talking about the dialogue. See, what is the dialogue? The word dialogue consists of two parts. Dia, which means a cross, and logos, which means reason or God or something on those lines. In other words, if you are in the dialogical relation, you are in the ideal relation in terms of communication.
That's an I-thou relation.
That's the I-thou relation.
I-it object,
right. Now you have another word that is the opposite of it, and that is the diabolic. Now dia means again a cross, and bolic, that comes from bolos, ball. The diabolic relation, you throw balls at each other. Now that can be bullets, that can be sticks, that can be rocks, that can be atomic bombs. Hydrogen bombs. And this is the age in which we are living now. Now this question that you are raising, how can we use the abundance of scientific progress, the abundance of philosophical, social insights.
No.
No?
The question I'm asking is, how do you differentiate between the capacity that exists as part of reality and the geopolitical organizational assumptions that does not recognize that that capacity exists? That's what bothers me.
Well,
and they both are called reality,
Well,
and they both will claim certain ideas of human nature and things like that, but they won't deal with that.
Well,
ontologic reality has changed.
That's where I say religion comes into the picture.
Okay.
Because,
or spiritual, yeah.
because the religion, as I see it,
Yes,
the Church of Humanism,
yes.
which means seeing reality as it is, and
yeah, but that reality is not seen.
right.
The old reality is all we see. We look at the cave wall paintings or something, and we don't look at this new reality that's just dawned.
The conventional religions don't allow it to happen.
Or the conventional politics, or the conventional economics, or the conventional anything. So where are we going? If it exists, it should be on every think tank wall. Is that possible? Because the situation, if it's different, makes the possibility for other things different. And it doesn't have to be spiritual.
Well, do you suggest that
it doesn't have to be with ethics or anything. It has to be. It could be at the level of efficiency. It's so inefficient.
So what would be the big slogan that you would put on that sign?
Have we transcended scarcity? That would be what I would think. You know, is there enough?
Well,
in terms of our capability.
I would agree with you on that. Plus.
Plus, okay, right.
And plus is the substance that would activate it.
Oh, in policy statements and that?
Well, it's not just politics. It's really, you see, if religion is the inner activity of a person to strive for the highest, and if that attitude can be cultivated through psychology.
For everybody.
For everybody.
For everybody
absolutely
should maximize,
Absolutely.
Yeah. Then we'd get somewhere.
Then we would get somewhere, but we don't have this.
No, but let's do it. Let's try and strive in that direction, right? In terms
well,
of
that's why I'm a humanist. That's
Good.
why I started the
and
Church
I think
of
I
Humanism.
am too. I think I am too. My pleasure. I'm sorry we've run out of time. We could go on talk. I'm sorry I talked too much. But I'm really bothered by this. It's a real conundrum. I can't understand. Your pleasure to have had the perceptions of Reverend Joseph Ben-David. He's the senior minister, or what is it?
That's right.
Of the Church of Humanism.
That's correct.
Here in New York City. He will give you contact information at the end. Get in touch with him. He's a good man, and he knew Martin Buber, and he's got a very good website where he discusses a great number of these kind of things. We've been trying to fool. I'm sorry if I got a little bit carried away with my own personal dilemma, but I think it's an important question.
No, I appreciate it because you were expressing the highest concern for life, for the future of humanity. We're talking about a huge subject.
Well, that's right, and it's all within this context of trying to understand these things, and you've got to, the things we've been wrestling with and so forth. Chinese say, spare us from living in interesting times. We certainly live at interesting times now, and these are investigated well in your seminars that you have at the church and so forth, and everybody's encouraged to get in touch with you. I really thank you for coming in.
It's a wrap.
That's a wrap, so I'm sorry.